You're staying back. Why don't you come back up here?
Look at Will.
You were here last time.
And just make sure you speak into the microphone.
You want me to speak into it? Is that close enough?
Yeah, that works. Just go with this.
Wait. Put this over here. That's me moving your mic then, because I gotta get over this side. No problem. Okay. All right. Good morning, and I want to thank you all for joining me today. We have with me a number of people involved in the building and codes effort. Most notably, we have Ed Markunas, who is the director. Stephen Powers, County Executive's Office. We have our County Attorney, Tom Humback. Spencer Chimway, who's a Human Rights Commissioner, just to name a few here today. And backed up, as you can see, a bit of an army of folks who have been doing God's work in Spring Valley. It's been exactly 1 year ago today I received a Valentine's Day gift. We fulfilled an order from the New York State Department of State to assume all functions and responsibilities for the Spring Valley Building Department. This is nearly an unheard of effort that took forward. In just 3 months' time after the direction came down, my administration launched an entirely new office within county government called our Office of Building and Codes. It was a near insurmountable mission, taking on code enforcement in a village best described as ground zero for illegal housing problems in Rockland County. We are literally trying to correct decades of mismanagement. We liken it to repairing a plane in mid-flight, a neglect of the New York State Uniform Code in the village, and remind everyone that something that will not or can be fixed overnight. To give you a better idea of what we're up against, people always ask these questions about that. One of about 800 properties inspected in the village of Spring Valley, all but one, which happened to be a firehouse, had multiple violations. To put this in further perspective, other municipalities on average only discover 1 or 2 violations per property. Our average for the village of Spring Valley is 10. That is a 5 to a 10-fold over the county average. I am very proud of the work that's been done, the difference we've made in just 1 year, and I can promise we'll continue to fix as much as we can up until the day we transition the department back to Spring Valley. As you can see by some of the properties that we have displayed here, that's not going to be easy to do. I could not be more proud of the job being done by Director Ed Markunas and his team. This has been, without question, an incredibly difficult, detailed, and time-consuming process to undertake, and I know those who had great doubt should have great support now for what's being done under his stewardship. I'm going to now turn it over to Director Markunas for a deeper look into what that process looks like from ground level. Ed?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, County Executive Day. First, I would like to thank everyone within the county government, specifically the county executive, for providing us the abundant amount of legal work and the resources needed to take on this task in establishing the new office. Thank you to the legislature for helping us out also. We created everything from the administrative court, from hearings to all new internal processes for issuing violation notices, and while facing challenge after challenge. At the start of this effort, we discovered a master list of properties that was provided by the Village of Spring Valley was inaccurate and incomplete. This required our team to spend 2 long months editing and unraveling this list of parcels associated in Spring Valley. When this began, we also had the Village of Spring Valley building and fire inspectors reporting to the county. This was to ensure the eventual return of this function to the village would be a smooth transition. So we took on the Village of Spring Valley employees. We had them here working for us. But unfortunately, all those inspectors have since been removed from participating, and they have been returned to the Village of Spring Valley because they were not adhering to the policies and procedures of this administration, nor the strict enforcement of the New York State Building Code. Due to the village's challenges with record keeping, we also had to devise our own interim record keeping system. And lastly, the biggest challenge came with the inspections, because every property we entered had not one or two, but multiple violations. In the past year, we have issued over 7,000 violations for 844 inspections. These images you see alongside us are just a tiny fraction of what we are encountering on a daily basis. As you can see, in photo 1 is a collapsed porch of an occupied single-family residence. Below that is a twisted main beam of an apartment building. Going to photo 3 is the rotted floor of an unlawful preschool located in a trailer, which doesn't even have a certificate of occupancy. As you can see, the trailer in picture 5 and the school bus behind it, that is the trailer in discussion without a certificate of occupancy. Below that is an unlawful and an uninhabitable and unlawful basement apartment in a single-family home. Next is another unlawful apartment, basement apartment with a cut main beam in the basement. So that load-bearing beam has been cut, and now people are living in those basements. Next, you can see with the decks, that's an unlawfully converted 2-family home into a 6-family apartment complex. Another example of something that's very concerning is the flammable, combustible material without a fire suppression system. No sprinkler system in that garage. Below that, you see additional electrical fire hazards and the fire escape. I call it the fire escape to nowhere. The fire escape is not functioning. That's putting so many people's lives at risk. As our first year focused on our enforcement and fire safety inspections, this year's focus is on re-inspections and gaining full compliance with New York State Uniform Code to protect our residents, visitors, and first responders in the village of Spring Valley. And as the county executive and I had said multiple times, fines are a tool we utilize to gain compliance. We remind everyone at home we only have the authority to enforce building and fire codes in the village of Spring Valley, and that was specifically granted by New York State. We do not have any outside authority outside the village. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ed. You know, both Ed and I share something. Both of us have time with the NYPD. We've both seen what can happen under certain circumstances. I don't mean to be melodramatic, but I will tell you the fact of the matter is our experience tells us what this Office of Building and Codes is doing is saving lives. I could not be more clear or more certain of that observation. And you know something, despite all the hurdles that Ed is just speaking of, we're on track to complete 3 years' worth of inspections in only 2 years, a year ahead of schedule. New York State has not yet detailed us what specific circumstances control the building department will be returned to Spring Valley. What I can tell you is that the Department of State has begun those conversations with the village and has requested their plan to when that day comes. That process and determination is up to the state, and as such, all questions regarding that should be directed to the Department of State or to the village of Spring Valley. In the last year, so many people have expressed that they want this administration to do more, expand into other municipalities. Not only do we not have the authority, but that would be a massive undertaking. This is all the work that is taking us to handle just one village, and indicative of why building and fire code enforcement is one of the primary focuses of local municipalities. With everything that we've encountered in this village, I cannot tell you how we've dodged countless bullets. If this doesn't change at the local level, it's only a matter of time before we see another tragedy like the Evergreen Court fire. I want our residents to hear me, to know that we understand and we share your frustration. Illegal housing is a major problem, and in this village, it's at a near crisis level. That is what we're trying to correct. The sad reality is enforcement is only a Band-Aid. It's not solving the true cause of this issue. It is up to those we elect to local office to make sure development is happening properly, responsibly, and safely. As a home rule state, this responsibility specifically falls to either the town or the village if there is one. The uniform code that we're functioning for is a minimum. Hear that again. That code is a minimum area of protection and safety standards, and the families we are elected to serve expect us to make sure landlords and developers are adhering to those standards. These laws are in place for one reason, as I mentioned earlier, simply to save lives. Anything less is putting profit above people, which is an utter disgrace. Allowing landlords to get by without building permits and certificates of occupancy or building at substandard levels places people at risk. Our municipalities need to act now before another person falls victim to a disaster that could have been easily prevented. Before we conclude, I want to remind everyone at home of one unalterable fact, that this problem underscores exactly why local elections matter. This county has about 200,000 active registered voters. While 75% of these voters typically turn out for the 2020 presidential election, only about 25% voted in the 2021 local races for town supervisors, mayors, village trustees, town council, and court justices. Voting for our nation's leaders certainly has value. I'm not going to quarrel with that. But voting for the officials making decisions that affect your daily life and your well-being have even more value. These are the races and people making decisions that impact upon your homes, your families, your schools, your taxes, and frankly, as you can see here, your very lives. If you don't like the choices being made on behalf of your community, then vote for candidates who will get it done right. Thank you, and right now we will take questions. I do want to offer one thing, because I'm sure it'll come up. As Ed Markunas mentioned, we do utilize fines to gain compliance. That's a fact. Right now, we've had about $152,775 levied in assessed fines from consent orders that were entered into agreement. Final determination received $6,500. The majority are in litigation. But at the end of the day, this administration will pursue everybody who owes the Rockland County taxpayers money for their misdeeds once it is decided that it's due to us through court action. We will collect every nickel and dime in service to the people of Rockland County. So with that, we have anybody that wants to ask any questions?
That last part, you said 6,500 collected?
Yes. For final determinations is when we've gone to court. We have assessed fines of $152,775. We've collected $6,500. The majority of these, obviously, are situations where we're being combated in court, which is fine. We have litigation, collections, and others are part of that time frame we were saying. The consent order assessed fines was $98,087. This is additionally in consent orders. What has been received of that $98,000 or so is about $57,000 so far. Yes, Bev?
I was just going to say, make sure you bring up the consent order ones and the final determinations, because
I got it. Always watch it out. Ben, anything else?
To clear up, 7,000 violations among 844 inspections. Is that 844 properties?
Okay, let me just let the director answer that question.
Yes, so out of the 844 properties, that is the number of inspections that were conducted, 844.
Okay, and the fines you mentioned, the 152,000 levied, was among those 844 properties?
Yes.
They're all court. Okay.
Which were from 7,000 violations?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So there's two separate items that we're looking at. Consent orders, people and property owners that want to come into compliance, but we're still in violation. We assess penalties on them in a consent order tallying $98,000. The consent orders paid to date $57,000. Final determinations of fines $152,000. So there's different avenues that we pursue to gain compliance and at the same time levy fines and penalties.
Basically, right now, we're looking at fines collectively of about $250,000, to make it simple. And we will, in the consent orders, obviously we're going to collect them because the owner has come to us and said, I give in, you're right, and they're going to pay the fine. The other ones are going to court, and we have to go through that process because we cannot collect anything in a contested area unless the courts say it's okay. But at the end of the day, it's $250,000 worth of fines that have been levied that will be collected, and that's about as clear as I can make.
Well, that's crystal. I appreciate it. You said this year's goal is to get full compliance in the village. I know you said compliance means to obey the building codes, but I mean, what is full compliance for this year? Your goal?
Full compliance is every property owner who should have anything that's being done in that area should meet the code. It's a very simple. It's the same thing. What we're expecting of Spring Valley, and many of the residents do the right thing. We're not going to quarrel with that. It's the oversight that was lacking. And as you can see, we had a number of inspectors here to start off with. They're all gone. Because what we're going to do this the right way. People you see behind me are doing it the right way. They're not going to accept anything less other than make sure that code is met. The codes are there for our safety and protection. They're not something that's made up. These are things that fire officers are involved in, engineers are involved in. We want to make sure we don't have things. I mean, it doesn't take a magician to figure out that that's not a place you want to live in some of these properties because it's dangerous. And we've had tragedies already, and we've had near calls and near misses much more often. So we're blessed in that. So our goal is to ensure that in Spring Valley, that every code is followed. We expect that just like you would expect of any property. So we expect the rules to be followed in Spring Valley like they're followed in the rest of the county.
Do you want to have control for longer?
No. We're not here. The state was very clear. This was a 2-year effort, an emergency. It was never been done in the state. The amount of work, the amount of time, the amount of personnel will be necessary for us to take on other responsibilities is a non-starter. This location here, when you walk through here and you go through all the work that's being done, this is just one village. There's 18 villages in Rockland. It would take a building such as this of personnel to do that. It's not logical. It doesn't make any sense. The way it should be done is local, the villages and the towns. And by and large, it works well. In some areas, it doesn't. And if you are a resident of a town or a village that it's not working well, get off of your you-know-what on election day and vote for someone who will do the right thing by you. That's what the responsibility for a resident is, to vote for the right person. Don't vote party. Vote for the person you know is going to do the right thing for you. That will change things.
Is that to say that there's policies and laws in place, but perhaps leadership is lacking?
We're here today because there were policies and codes in place statewide not being followed, even with a state monitor. Even that state monitor couldn't get it done. And I'm going to bring that up. We had a state monitor at Spring Valley. Even with that monitor on site, it was still a mess. This team came in and is fixing it, tangibly so. They're going to turn this back to Spring Valley in a great position to keep moving forward. That's exactly what the goal is. And again, that's a direct order from the state. It's not something that we opted to do on our own, but things have gotten so bad the state directed us to do it. We were happy to help. We're here to serve the people, and that's basically where we are right now.
Was there a violation that was most common? Like that came up more than others?
I would say no. I would say there were so many violations riddled throughout the village of Spring Valley that we come across new violations every day. And I just want to elaborate a little bit more on the substandard living conditions that people should not be living in. It's just not fair to the people of the village of Spring Valley. And our first responders should not be fooled into these locations that don't have certificate of occupancies or that were unlawfully converted, they wouldn't even know what they're walking into in case of a major fire. So these are the things that we're looking out for, the county executive, health, safety, and welfare of our first responders and all of the village residents.
Just to add on to that, we had a tragedy down in the Bronx. I believe it was 4 firefighters who got caught up in that fire with Jeff Poole. You know, when firemen, firewomen go into a house, okay, they see the house, they know what it should look like inside. That's if you see a cape or you see you know, any other kind of building, you know by the style of building where the walls are. It's when you see the extra work done for nothing other than greed. It's just greed. It's a slumlord who's trying to make a buck and putting people's lives at risk to start. Now, there's a fire. Now the fire officers have to go in and save people, and all of a sudden they run into a wall that's not supposed to be there. They get trapped. So, I mean, this is what, and in this particular case in the Bronx, 2 of those fire officers had to jump from I think, a 3rd or 4th floor window, and with severe injuries. And that's just the first responder side. And again, you'll note a bit of passion when it comes to both Ed and myself on that, because we saw this up front and personal as NYPD officers. So we know what this can turn into. We know when we're looking at this. You asked a very simple question: would you want your child to live in one of these locations, knowing full well that you're not safe? And it's not necessary. There is not a reason in this God's earth that a landlord cannot do the right thing instead of worrying about making money. You can still make money. It's the American way. I have no problem with that. But make sure when you put a location together, build it to code, make sure the tenants are safe. It's the least you can do as a landlord. One more.
But do you have other schools? You said that trailer there was an unauthorized school. Do you have a figure for how many schools
we can show you the entirety of the and I'm sure you can want to film it. We want you to film it actually, so people understand what we go through here. But we have the whole office area. You're welcome to take a look at everything and get the information you want. Okay.
Last one now.
Yeah. What do you want?
Were there any challenges in terms of culture or religion? I have to ask.
Any challenges?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely no. You know, many people made an issue of that, thought there would be a problem. I don't pay attention to people who just run at them out. We made it very clear what we were doing. We had all lines of communication open. If there was any concerns, whether it be ethnic, religious, or anything else, we were clear about what we were trying to do. We spoke to people. They understood. The fact of the matter is we have 2/3 of the fines that we had to levy, people entered into consent orders. There were times where people just didn't know. But of course, there was no follow-up by the former administration who was doing this, the building and codes in Spring Valley. So some people legitimately were building things and had no idea what there was rules. They were just doing the best they could do. And they turned around right away and said, okay, no problem. So, some may say there's an issue. We're succeeding. We're succeeding well. So I don't see any issue because I think everybody understands what we're doing and why we're doing it. It's no more than what you're seeing right here. Okay? Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.